Well, good afternoon, friends. Thank you for joining us today on the Unbreakable Men podcast. I am pretty excited about this conversation that we're going to step into today. I feel like we are in this incredible season right now where we are tested on all areas to show up specific ways. Authentically, of course, is what we desire, but we're pressured in many ways to show up in ways that don't always align with who we are. Well, one of the key messages that Gene Jochen is sharing with us today is something that I think you can sink your teeth into, particularly in a time where everything is questioned for authenticity, yet true performers show up, and true leaders are the ones that are going to withstand these changing times. So please help me welcome to the stage Gene, who is going to be sharing with us his lessons from 100+ marathons and how, with the marathon mindset, you can't fake a marathon. Gene, welcome to the stage. I'm excited to have you today. I'm excited to dig into this conversation and learn from your wisdom.
Wow, that's quite an introduction, Teresa. And thank you. You're right. You definitely can't fake the marathon.
Yeah. I really am interested in this concept because, Gene, as you're fully aware, right now in this season, there is a lot of pressure for performance. And a lot of the pressure that we're receiving is external, it's AI generated. There's all of this artificial performance that is out in the world. And yet you have personally built your life around discipline and strategic process and strategic timing. And I know you get to share these insights with leaders all over the world. And I also know that you have a book that's getting ready to come out specifically for leaders. But talk to me a little bit about, first, we're going to go into what is your take on this artificial intelligence, or maybe we'll call it artificial performance?
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. So, I think life, to me, life is a strategy. Life is a marathon in itself. So it's, you can't fake it. It's not a sprint, and everything that we do, everything that we take on takes a lot of extra effort and extra work. And, just you can't fake your job. You can't fake performance. And yes, with the AI world now, I think it's fantastic because it really enhances and using it as an enhancement to your performance and takes you to another level now that we couldn't really achieve before. So it's part and parcel, but not cheating and not using it for everything. And you still have to perform. You still have to show up and lace up and do the job or do your job and face life every day. So
Yeah, I think about a marathon runner, and I think of a true champion, right? Before our conversation, you talked about, a lot of people can make their way through a 5K. I can almost make my way through one. Like, I remember I was working with my doctor a few years ago, and she, I don't think she was joking, but she said, Teresa, for that type of body that you want to cultivate, you need to start running. And I said, well, then I changed my mind on the type of body that I want to create,
that's
because
funny.
running is
Well,
not my thing. Yeah.
it doesn't have to just be running. It could be in anything, and there, of course, our health, our physical health is our wealth, and we put so much emphasis on achievement, but we really have to have that balance. So whatever you do, it doesn't have to be running. Cycling, going to the gym, walking, right? As long as you're mobile and doing something, and then taking it to the next level. If you're a higher achiever in business, then you can tie that into pickleball, for example. I know a lot of people that work very hard at pickleball because that so finding your passion, or golf, or again biking or soccer, any type of physical work, physical athleticism also helps your brain, helps you to be motivated to discipline yourself on the work side of life, balance as well. So it really is a balance between both.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we can tip the scale and get completely out of balance, right? I'm thinking, as from a leadership perspective, with thinking about, where we're at in the season, where there is a lot of pressure to use tools, to use accelerators, to use supplements, so to speak, in the business world to help promote and perform. One of the things that I recently heard, Gene, that was spoken about AI, and it was that AI doesn't necessarily replace the activity, but it exposes the strength behind it. And as I think about a marathon, well, number one, something I think about a marathon is for a lot of people that becomes like a lifetime goal, like a bucket list item or something that you do one time. Um, but true strength isn't necessarily found in doing something one time. And as you prepared for the marathon, it wasn't a one time decision. You had to really get in the game and build that strength so that what's exposed is the finish line. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you, number one, let's start with how did you decide that a marathon was a bucket list item? And then what kept you coming back?
Okay, well, that's a long story. It is in my book. I won't bore you with all the little things. But first of all, having that epiphany moment in my early life, in my early mid 30s, deciding, and I was in the food industry, and deciding that I was enjoying too much of my samples, and also beverages as well, and I was I was well overweight, around 220 pounds. I'm 5'8", so I was a pretty large guy. And I had one of those lost weekends in Las Vegas that many people experience. I won't go into too much detail, but just really decided that I needed to change my physical identity or my physical self. So that was really part of it. It was just reinventing myself as in terms of how I look and how I felt about myself. I had poor self-esteem. I was in sales. I was doing really well. I was a funny person. People liked to buy from me, but I wasn't achieving, I knew I was underachieving what I was capable of. I remember I was also doing training, and I was teaching stress management, I think it was, and I was so stressed, and here I am, that's the imposter syndrome, and I'm like, well, who am I to teach people about stress? I am a boiling cauldron of stress. so that was sort of another awakening that I had to really get control of my physical side. And once I started achieving that, I was doing an MBA program part-time. I had a family life. I had full-time job. I don't know how I was doing it. And I just literally started running just initially just to, to lose some weight. And also I needed the energy, and I knew, I would eat my dinners, and I would, be on the couch for the evening. And I didn't want to be that couch potato. I wanted to, exceed and beyond what I was doing. So I think that was, my epiphany was that, I knew I was capable of more. And with life, it's not a sprint. It's it is a marathon, and everything we do, whether you're running a business or you're functioning in your job, it's little things. Yes, you start with a small step, and then you build up to a 5K, 10K, and that's what happened with myself. I built up to the half marathon distance, and I enjoyed it. Especially finishing, and also the accolades that go with that, being proud of my personal accomplishment. And then I met some other crazy runners, and we joined we call a marathon clinic, and we trained for our first marathon. And my first marathon was the Ottawa Marathon. I was up in Canada, and I missed qualifying for the Boston Marathon by 23 seconds. I had no idea I was capable of that. And then to realize that I came that close, and I could have gone to Boston. And backing up my story, I lived in New York City for many years, and I used to see the New York City Marathon when they were running by. And to me, that was like going to the moon, like running in the New York City Marathon. And the Boston Marathon was like going to Mars, like so far out of my element, right? And then as I realized I could run, and then I got to that first marathon, missing the Boston Marathon by that short of a time. I later that summer went to Montreal, and I ran the Montreal Marathon, and I qualified for Boston in my second marathon. Not only that, my third marathon was the New York City Marathon, because they had a lottery, and I had put my name in, and I won the lottery. And my fourth marathon was the Boston Marathon in April that year. So I ended up like unbelievable, blew my mind, blew my myself out of the water, and that was kind of the physical achievements, and then that gives you such confidence and that you can transpose into work as well, and so I had my career path, and I could not have done it without my physical prowess as well.
Absolutely. We think about you talked about the stress, you talked about, the daily decisions that we make in our work life with the foods that we're eating and all those things, they compile and they can create chaos, right? In our body and our minds and our ability to show up with clarity. Um, but I have to just say, how cool is that? Like in your book, One Step Forward, and I'm going to actually put the banner up so that we can see it all on here. But in your book, one of the things that you or your tagline for your book says, becoming who you were meant to be. And I think it's so cool just hearing you say, my first marathon, I missed it by so much. My second one, and then I qualified. And then the third one was the Boston Marathon.
Third
Like,
was New York City, then Boston.
and then Boston. Okay. But how cool is that for you to identify purpose attached through those behaviors? So talk to us a little bit about that. I'm going to get this up for us.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I really enjoy about running, especially at a competitive in a competitive field like the New York City or the Boston, is you're actually running with the pros. You're way further back, but you can't play baseball with professional baseball players. You can't play football or with professional players, but you can run with these professional runners. So it kind of puts you in a different element as well. And they're people just like all of us. And I've met Olympic athletes, and it's just such great achievements in terms of their athleticism and athletic ability. And there's genetics, and yes, but really, it's just like work. The harder I work, the luckier I get. And so, if you're willing to do the work, even if you ran even if you train for a 5K or anything that you do, and then transpose that to life. So that's where it becomes becoming who you're meant to be. And first, it was about me becoming who I was meant to be. And I used to say when I was working in the corporate world, that's what I did, but being a runner is who I am.
Yeah.
I also am a musician. Being a musician, those are my identities. That's not what I do, and so that's where people, I think, maybe fall short in terms of their own identity. Identify with find what you're good at, find your passion, become the best at that you can be, and and it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I had no idea. Our doors open and close our whole our entire lives every day, and making good decisions, taking the right paths. And there's a lot of people that make bad decisions and take the wrong paths. We all start in the same place, pretty much, and then what you do with it is your journey.
Yeah. I so much appreciate the message around identity. I think about how many of us have run into situations of our lives where a door was closed and we had so much identity built into that hat or that position or that title, and all of a sudden we have no idea who we are, or the impact we make on this world. So can you talk to me a little bit about your viewpoints on how did you discover your identity and how did you learn to separate that from titles?
Well, thank you. I did enjoy the work when I was working in the corporate world. I was coaching, I was leading, I was in talent management. I actually ran operations for some time. I was in sales. So I'm a very people-oriented type A personality. So as long as I'm having contact with people and I really enjoy that business. And then it was in the food industry initially for many years. So that was a fun industry, so I was having fun. So I think that's a lesson for all of us to find out what you like and do that, and if you're stuck in a job, I remember I went to China a few years ago, and they took us on a tour, and they took us into a government factory. Chinese, they were making pottery, I think it was, and Chinese pottery. And the tour guide said, okay, now you're going to see government faces when you go in, because, communist country, and everybody they're doing their work in the government face, and I think of people, that in their careers, they hate their jobs, they just every day, but they're sticking it out for that pension, or, I remember I had somebody working for me in a union position, and he hated his job, and I'm like, well, why did you quit? You hate it so much here. Well, I need the money. I'm like, yeah, but you're killing all of us.
Right. We're miserable, actually. Yeah.
So if you enjoy what you do, at least moderately try to enjoy it more, and make the most of it, right? Because the alternative isn't so good sometimes.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point. In our 7-pillar framework with the Unbreakable Life Journey, both for men and women, but with that whole program, the third pillar, pillar number 1 is identity. So we do a lot of identity work, because I think that in order to do what you say is become who you were meant to be, is you have to know who you are first.
Right. Yes.
But the third pillar is beliefs. And, as we're talking about just that one example right there of the man who was tied to an identity that he actually did not enjoy. But he had this belief that I'm tied to it because of the money, or because of the pension, talk to us a little bit about maybe how you see beliefs play out in identity formation.
Well, that's fantastic. I love that. Well, again, I think, believing in yourself, first of all, and I'll use the marathon analogy because, it's easy. It's 26.2 miles. That's a long journey, right? And, you lace up, and you did all the work, you get to the start line, and then now you've got, this long road ahead of you for the race. So it's no different than our life, and believing, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And so, using those types of metaphors, and I use a mantra while you're running, or while you're, one step forward. I think I can. I know, going back to school for an MBA, or going back to school to get a college diploma. That takes a lot of extra effort. It's not easy. Or looking for a promotion. You need to do all the training, and that's all part of the journey, right? It's, becoming who you are, and finding your identity, and again, finding what you're passionate at, and it's recognized. If you're passionate, if you're in a job and you're passionate at what you do, it's going to be recognized by the senior leaders in the company as well, and you'll have more opportunity. And again, back to that, the harder I work, the more opportunity I get, and the luckier I get.
Yeah. I think it's fun to hear you say other people notice it. Like, one of my favorite messages that my pastor says, he says, be the thermometer, not the thermostat, or be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Oh, he's going to get mad at me when he watches this. Set the temperature, right? Because
Right.
You walk into a room, and if you're miserable, guess what? The leaders notice, and they're the ones that are going to make it more miserable or less.
Right. They're looking, and succession planning, right? It's not just because you show up and, you do the job, and, oh, you've been there the longest, I'm going to get the next promotion because I've been here longer than the other person. Then the other person gets the promotion, and what just happened, and you almost get hit, with a 2x4 because, I thought I was doing well. Well, you're not, and, and so even, I think you made a good point too, asking, asking your boss, how am I doing? What can I do differently? What can I do more of, less of? And hold yourself accountable. And if you're just coasting, you're just going to coast. And then, I'm not one of those people. I don't want to be, my dying days looking back. I wish I did this. I should have done that. I don't want to have those types of regrets, So seize the moments, because, boy, time does fly. And so, take advantage of everything you can, and enjoy the ride.
I bet time certainly slows down when you're on a marathon, right?
That slows down.
You're like, oh my gosh, I was chatting with one of my clients earlier.
Am I there yet?
Yeah. We're like, how much longer?
I love it. You're mile 22, and somebody says, you're looking good. You're almost there. And you're like, I know I'm not looking good. And I know I'm not almost there, but thank you anyway. You know, now leave me alone. Let me suffer in silence.
Wow. Let me suffer. You're messing up my mantra that I've been going through. I can do one more. That's
Exactly.
funny. Oh man.
Yes.
So speaking of one more, you didn't just do one more. You did, how many times have you done the Boston Marathon?
Well, you know, I that first so that first Boston Marathon, I actually qualified for the next year. So I ended up running under 320. I think I needed a three at the time, and I ran the Boston Marathon 10 years in a row, and all between the age of 40 and 49.
Wow.
It's unbelievable, and you know, and you know, I still pinch myself. Um, I didn't. I ran. I was there. My last year was the year of the bombing, which was a tough one. It lasted the 10 in a row. But I did go back in 2022. I am now announcing that I am training to requalify to go back in 2027. I watched it yesterday, and I just love that event and the crowds and the people and just being part of it. But I did, fortunately, you know, I worked hard, but I did run it 10 years in a row, and that's, you know, unbelievable. Again, it's like going to Mars 10 times.
But yeah, as you're talking about the Boston, I'm reflecting on the opening pages of your book. And with the opening pages of your book, you literally describe um, everything. What did it feel like? Who was standing in what line? Where were they at? Who was up first? And all of those things. How many times do you replay that vision in your head?
All the time, you know. Yeah, when I'm running, funny, running in, you know, I've run over 100 marathons, and they're all, almost every one is so vivid. I can't tell you what I had for, you know, breakfast yesterday, but I can tell you where I was mile 22 and, you know, the 2010 Boston Marathon. It's such an isolated, I don't know, something, you know, just the way it burns in. And so, yeah, just that, you know, the energy and just being there at the start line. I don't think anybody that runs it doesn't have that overwhelming feeling, and all the stuff you've done and all the work accolades, and, you know, and when you're standing in, you know, there in the Boston Marathon again with the fastest runners of the world, and you're actually in the field with those people, you know, and you can sometimes see them, you know, or you know, it's unbelievable, and you're literally, you know, you're pinching yourself that you're there. That everybody is such a wonderful space of positive people. Everyone worked hard to get there, and everyone is so positive with one another. And then the finish, you know, when you finish, you've got it all over again because everybody's high-fiving and hugging, and you know, we did it. So it is part of a tribe. It's, you know, it's a great tribe to be in, and, you know, it's something that, you know, you never do forget.
Yeah. Wow. One question I love to have an answer from with anybody that I have a chance to have a conversation with, whether it's on a podcast or whatever, right? What do you think your life would look like today had you not had the defining
Mm.
moment that said, I need to start running?
Wow. Well, I'm sure my health would be very poor. I would probably have continued with very poor self-esteem. You know, and, you know, I know, you know, I have family members, and I've got, you know, family members with diabetes, with rheumatoid arthritis, with MS, with heart conditions. And, you know, they ask me, you know, what do you take? And I said, I take vitamins and I work out and run, you know. And so, you know, so in terms of longevity, in terms of, you know, my physical health, and really, you know, it's given me confidence as well in my career, you know, having that, you know, in my tool belt of my talent stack, I guess I could say, right? Because I've done a lot of things, but it also gave me an extra boost of confidence as well, you know, in the work world as well. So kind of double edged, but yeah, I don't even, can't even fathom, you know, where I would be, and you know, it's just, certainly I'm glad, you know, I made the right decision, of course, but you know, and I want to inspire others too to make the right decisions, and there's, you know, you can always turn our lives around, and take the other path.
Mm. So I know that that is a big piece of the work that you do with motivational speaking, and of course the book that you're doing now. One of the things that just hit me as you were talking about just the vivid memory of where you were at on mile 22. How many people do you think in this world today, whether it's because of identities or beliefs or mindsets or limiting conditions that surround them, or maybe they've just never heard this inspiration before, but how many people do you think in this world right now have never had a mile 22 mark moment?
Um, you made me think, and part of where I am today is giving back and helping others, and I feel for younger people that never had good maybe good guidance. I don't feel that I had great guidance myself either, but I've had a few people along the way tell me you're capable of greater things. One is a boss, and it blew my mind. I wish I had heard that when I was younger. So I want to take it back, and for us as either parents or leaders, if you're leading the scouts or you're coaching a sports team, or whatever it is, you never know that one little thing that you say that might ignite a spark in someone else and give them the confidence as well to make the right decisions, and you never know where that might take somebody. So that's kind of where I if I answered it correctly, but I think that's giving back, is a big part of it. And no matter how small it is, something positive that maybe they never hear that, from a family member, from a parent, or from or from a guidance counselor or a teacher. And then they get into the work world, and so many people, have had a rough road, and so just that one little inspiration might, spark something in somebody to be to their greatness, to become who they were meant to be.
Yeah. One of my beliefs, of course, scripturally, is that words have so much power, right?
Yes.
Power of life and death are in the tongue, and those who love it shall eat of its fruit, is what scripture says.
Exactly.
And from that, one of the things that we dig into with the Unbreakable Life platform is defining moments. Do you remember a specific defining moment where somebody either spoke life or death that you would be willing to expand on today?
Well, again, I did um, recognize Ron Longboat. He was one of my mentors, a great leader, great boss, well respected by everyone. And I remember the moment where he said, you've got some greatness in you. You're going to do great things. And I didn't think that I would become the president. I knew what I was moderately capable of, but it was always in the back of my mind. And so I think that's kind of that inspiration for me, a moment of truth as well. And like you said, so many the words, and so many, if you just constantly are hearing negativity, and you can't do this, and why would you try that, don't even try that. I go back to the analogy of ants. If you take ants and you put them in a glass, and what happens, one of the ants will start climbing on the backs and try to climb out, and what do the other ants do? They keep pulling them back down, keep pulling them back in. And I've seen that working in a union or managing a union environment. I was just looking to promote somebody, and well, I don't want to be promoted. The guys tell me I'm in my job if I do, and the guys, and we limit ourselves by that stinking thinking negativity. And why would I try it? I've always failed, and my father said I was a failure, and and maybe it's just subconsciously in the back of our mind. So it's very hard. I don't know what the answer is, how, to get through that, but take a chance, take a risk, one step forward.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm watching. Okay, you have your earbuds in, right? And I'm thinking about right now that when you're running on a marathon, I'm assuming, because I've clearly never.
It's okay. You don't have to.
But I am assuming that
Yes.
when you are running your race, you're not distracted by your cell phone.
Right.
You're probably not reading a book.
No.
You're probably not even reading the street signs that are next to you. You're probably incredibly focused.
Yes.
At the same time, there's a dialogue happening,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So, talk to us about your dialogue.
Well, it's great. So first of all, for many years it was like illegal or against the rules to wear earbuds in a race any distance.
Really?
Times are changing, and
Why?
more people are wearing them.
Why was that
Yes.
illegal?
Well, because it actually there is a bit of an advantage if I had earbuds in and I'm maybe playing motivational you know podcast or I'm listening to music. It takes your mind off of the actual physical work. So it definitely is illegal for pros to wear them. I was always a purist. I never wore them. I still don't. But also in training too. And I also do trail running and I do my best thinking when I'm running. It's fantastic for problem solving. And, I would, when I was in my corporate life and I had some major challenges, even today, I'll go for a run and boom, the epiphany, I'll get clear my head, and I'll have the answer. That's what I need to do. So using it that way because you're so focused and really your mind is moving with your body. You don't just shut down completely. That's what I'm going to say. You actually do a lot of thinking while you're out there. Now, part of it, you're thinking, I'll never do this again. This is the last time I ever do this to myself. I'm never running another marathon, and that thought goes through our heads too. Every at mile 22 at the wall, they call it. And then the funniest thing, you get home that night after a marathon, and you're back online, and you're Googling the next marathon. So it's so it is amazing. I'm not a one and done bucket list person, at least for myself. A lot of people do. Okay, I'll move on and do something else now. That's fine, good for them. But you do have to, and it does teach you that discipline, right? Of thinking positively because you can't think negatively when you're running. You want to finish, right? And that's where I come with, man, one step forward, or you got this, you got this, you got this. Keep moving forward, keep moving forward. I know I can do this. I'm going to finish. And with a 26.2 mile, it is one step forward, and you will get there. And work in your job. We all have, the future. Where do I want to see myself in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? If you have that clear path, one step forward, you're going to get there.
I'm so grateful you did not say and 2 steps back.
Sometimes, it feels like that. Well, that's the part of life that does that, right? And that's part of my next book, actually, which is tentatively the marathon mindset for leaders. And there is that one step back, 2 steps back, right? In a business, you hit that wall, you hit that 22 mile, and you're, all of a sudden, do I, is this business going to succeed? Do I put the money in? Do I invest? Do I, whatever, so you do have those 2 step back moments, of course, but you've got to, keep persevering.
Yeah. I think about the discipline, obviously, that it takes to have that kind of level of commitment. And you parallel that to owning a business, being an entrepreneur. Like there is legitimate discipline required, especially there's always been there, but especially in today's world. Speaking of identity, going back to that for a moment, because I feel like, and a lot of the business owners that I've spoken to lately, is they've utilized so much of the AI tools that without being super clear on their identity, on their core values, on their discipline statement, all of those things, it's very easy. And maybe they were planning for that marathon, but now they're like in Kansas instead of Louisiana or something. Like, I'm thinking from Texas, right?
Yes.
They got off base. And sometimes I think by not being clear on what it is we want, we can't become who we were meant to be because we were maybe running that race pretty far, but in the wrong direction. Have you ever had that happen before, where you're practicing your running and you're like, whoa, I don't even know where I'm at?
Yeah, absolutely. You have those moments that, I can't do this. And, I become an entrepreneur in the last 10 years, but I always envy, entrepreneurs because of being able to, you do constantly, shift. You have to shift, right? It's a constant shift. And I saw it during COVID where, a lot of businesses had to shift, and change and morph. And now, coming into the AI's been here for a while. I think, if but it's, you still was, we need the humans. And I love that I'm here today with you because we need to humanize ourselves and still stay connected as humans and not become completely, taken over by robots. And, we're seeing more and more of that technology and, restaurants and travel, and it's coming. It's here in some places. I was in Japan and I had a security robot roll up to us. We were in an office building and a security robot. So jobs are shifting, jobs are changing, and traditional jobs. So you do need to be adaptable and be ready, to not just mind shift, but to shift your change, be able to, I used to say, be a quick change artist, right? Being able to change and adapt quickly. So there's a real art to that. So you can't be steamrolled by the AI. We still need people, and I think we're going to be around for a long time as a species, but I hope not completely replaced.
Yeah.
So use it as a tool, right? I had somebody yesterday. I said it was kind of fun. I did a health and longevity program for myself, or protocols using AI, plugged in all my vitals, all my goals, and etc. And I sent it to a friend of mine, and I said, my assistant did this for me. He says, "Oh, you have an assistant?" I said, "Yeah, Alan Iverson." The answer. And I don't even got it initially. And I'm like, "Yeah, Alan Iverson's my assistant." But I have an assistant now, right? And what would have taken me months to put together, I was able to, put this amazing program together, and it blew my mind, So
Sure. And then
using
think
it to
about
do
how that can expedite your marathon, right? If you get dialed in a lot quicker with your nutrients and all of that.
exactly, and you still need coaches, and you still need nutritionists, and you still need, all of that, but and it's going to help them as well. So you take yourself to the nth level, and now, man, my assistant's a lot smarter than I am. It makes me look good.
Well, it was Ford. I want to say Tom Ford, but that's not Tom Ford. Uh, the Ford mechanics, right?
Yes,
His famous quote was, "Surround yourself with people smarter than you." Right?
that's right.
You don't have to be the smartest one in the room. And so what if it's a robot? Like, it's okay.
Yes, exactly. I wrote my book. I did not use AI. It's my story. People are writing books with AI. Things like that, right? So, but songs. I play music, and I write songs, and then I've been dabbling in music. And you wouldn't believe what you can do in AI in that world, like everywhere, medicine, everything, right? But you still can't. You still have to run the marathon. You still have to do the physical work,
Well,
and
that's the thing. Nobody else can run your race.
that's right, right, right. Whatever job. So for yourself too, right? Being able to utilize the AI to technology side of it, but you still you need to show up and be you.
And be you, yeah, because a robot was not designed to be one of us, right? It's designed
Right.
to assist us and to support and to do all those wonderful things. But I think those unique gifts and talents and skills and ambitions are unique to us. So
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
Absolutely.
So
Awesome.
when we're thinking about this, the adaptation, of course, of AI and all that, and you're thinking about your book, okay? So I'm really thinking about your upcoming book, The Marathon Mindset for Leaders. Did I get that correct?
Yes, you did.
Okay, perfect. Um, with AI, we have a speed of execution. We have a lot of things that we didn't have access to. I remember last year in March, one of my coaches said, Teresa, are you using AI? I'm like, of course I'm not using AI. Like I want it, I want everything to be authentic. Like, and he was like, okay, get over yourself. Get on the
Get over
computer.
yourself. Yes, exactly.
Like,
You'll be done in 6 months. That would have taken you 10 years, or you'll never
oh
complete. Right?
my gosh, the
Yes.
things that you can
Yes.
expedite.
Yes.
And in the process of expediting, you can't rush the one step in front of the other, right?
Right.
So, talk to us a little bit about some of your marathon mindset leadership tools that you have in that book.
Well, it's broken into 4 chapters, and I've completed the first chapter, but I've got the title and the subtitle. So really, it's getting to the start line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a leader, you have a vision. You want to build a business. You need to get to the start line somehow. So there's all the prep work, right? There's all the training. There's all of the investments, and there's all of the you got to hire staff, and you've got to do all this behind work that even just to get to the start line, right? Then, using it, maybe in a small analogy, but then you buy a business or you start a business, and now the door's open, whether it's a brick and mortar or some sort of online, whatever the business. So now you're at the start line. Now let's go. Now we're going to start. So now the next chapter is all about all the fundamentals of getting the upstart, and actually now we're how do we get clients? We need to get clients. We need to manufacture, produce whatever the product is, and scale it and sell it and go online with it. So now you're actually running the business. Then you hit the wall. That's when it's like the clients stop calling. Our competitors are eating our lunch. We're not making the money to pay the bills. We're really, do we really keep this thing going, or do we just shut her down, or do we look for more investors, or do we change our strategies and shift? And now you're working through that wall. We call it in running, right? As a leader, you've got that business wall. Is this, why am I here? Why am I doing this? All of the self-doubt. And as an entrepreneur, as a leader, that's all on your shoulders, right? You don't have oftentimes a company that's going to support your department. You're just you're running it. So from that leadership, entrepreneurship side of it, you've got to persevere, and do you quit? And I do talk about DNF in my book. DNF is did not finish, but I also call it did nothing foolish. So do I want to sink another $1 million into a sinking ship, or do I just walk away and count my losses, or do I do that and take the next, did nothing foolish, and so now you push through the wall, and now you've got the finish line where you become a success. And so not only as a budding business going from the start through the journey to a successful business, but you can also then put it into context of departmentalize it as well. So my next book, which I haven't started yet, is I'm thinking like chicken soup, marathon mindset for sales, or for sales leaders, because now you can transpose that into sales, and you come up with a selling strategy. And do we invest in this strategy? Do we take, because that's what businesses do, right? They have teams of people, and they have lawyers, and they have, but if you're an entrepreneur or self, running business, you don't have that. So that's kind of where, it's sort of part motivational, but also knowing where you are in the stages of the journey, and making those decisions. And then there's other models. I've got lots of different tools and models built into it as well. And that's kind of, having fun with that. So that, a few months out. But AI has accelerated, helping me, it was brilliant, and kind of mind mapping what I needed to do, and you hit walls yourself, right? And being able, I use AI all the time. It's like, give me a different, spin it this way, spin it that way. What would I? There it is. Thank you. Now give me the model. And so using it, just, man, the brain power is incredible now.
Absolutely. It allows us to see angles that we would have never considered before, right? And okay, in a marathon, I have to ask this question. In a marathon, do they actually like shoot the gun, like to start
Yes, they actually do. There's
So,
usually like it's like a cap gun, or like Boston, it sounds like a cannon that goes off actually. So
okay. So I have this fun story that I tell my team. One of my skills or gifts, if you want to call it a gift, you might want to even call it a curse sometimes. But one of them is the Clifton Strength Finders tools. One of mine is Activator. And so I jokingly tell my friends and my team that I am a shoot, aim, ready kind of person.
okay, I've heard that before, right?
And I'm
Shoot
like,
first, yes,
yeah, shoot first, then we get ready and we aim, or I don't
right,
even know, because sometimes
yes,
I'm just like, I get this.
yeah,
It's a blessing and sometimes not such a blessing, but you just get an idea and you run with it.
right.
That is the only running I do, by the way. But but with your book, which I love what you're doing, is you are countering some of the information that's being publicized or advertised, or these systems that are showing up on social media that say, eh, just follow this system. You don't actually have to learn anything about business to be
Right.
a billionaire, right? And okay, if you had not prepared for a 5K, how could you do your marathon?
Right. Nope, absolutely. You have to start somewhere, start small and chunk it
Yeah,
along the way, right? And I go back to, the analogy eating, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
yeah,
And you can't, and you have a vision of the big picture, but at the same time, you're never going to get there. It's so far away. So just one step forward, just do it a little bit, chunk it, and you have to be disciplined, right? Running a business or starting a business, it's a lot of hard work. And as any self-made millionaire, billionaire, they don't sleep. They're all in, right? And you almost have to be like OCD all in as well, and find your passion. Or if you're passionate about it, you're going to be successful. But if you're just, I'll try this and I'll try that, and I don't know, see, let's try that this month, that's never going to work for you.
I think about the phrase that we used a couple times, once before we got on and once just briefly on the interview so far, and we talked about imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And you know, I look at imposter syndrome two different ways. Number one is when I am transitioning from one level to another level,
Mm-hmm.
when I am in that process. That middle piece is where that
Yes.
imposter kicks in, because my evidence hasn't stacked up enough, right? And my belief system that says I'm there. But the other side of imposter syndrome that I see so much is when somebody has an overinflated, unearned belief
Yes.
about
Mm-hmm.
something, and then they try to match it without experience. And then that creates this heaviness that often leads to desperation or discouragement. And that's what I think your book, The Marathon Mindset for Leaders, is going to be able to help reverse for a lot of people.
Thank
Um, you're welcome, because I love hearing how your systemed approach is going to really support people and really bring some certainty to what's very uncertain as a business owner and entrepreneur.
Excellent. So yeah, a couple of things there you're saying. So yeah, absolutely. You're always gonna have you have that self doubt, right? And I want to start whatever business it is, and somebody's gonna say, oh, why would you do that? Somebody else started that and they failed. You might hear that from a family member. So you really have to believe in what you believe in. So that's first. So I think that takes away some of that imposter syndrome where you really, this is what I believe I can make it. And I love watching like what's that show that Dragon's Den, and when they present all these wild
Like Shark
you know
Tank?
Shark Tank's the other one. Yeah, Shark Tank. I love it because some of the stuff is so crazy, but you're like, wow, like like somebody's like, why didn't I ever think of that?
And where in
So
the world did that idea come from?
right, right. So we need that, right? We need that energy and enthusiasm, and they're so passionate about what they invented, right? And and you're like, and they get they either they get the investment or they don't, and so, but at least they tried, right? So I think that's the first, and then so being passionate, and then you said something else, and it reminded me of the phrase I used to say, "Fake it until you make it," because there is that fake it until you make it part often along the way too. I know when I was in sales and then sales management, and then the company came to me and they said, "Oh, we want you to do training," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I was so scared. Like you know, yeah, I gotta get, so I joined Toastmasters, and because I didn't want to be an imposter, I needed to be successful at it, and so I learned how to, how to speak at public speak, and I learned how to get, talk off the cuff and be on my feet, and that was a great, by the way, for anybody in their career. It was a great program. Really gets the butterflies out, especially, even in business, and just gives you so much confidence. But again, it's that imposter syndrome, and I go back to when I was teaching stress, and you think you got stress? What about me? And I was an imposter, and I recognized it, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta get my stuff together here, So, but people, there are a lot of people that maybe these personality disorders that people don't see and that's actually, that reminds me of something else. I did a lot of training, self discovery, things like Myers-Briggs and social styles and true colors and all these models, and I recommend that for anybody as well. Know thyself first, know yourself. And I met a lot of people, later on in life, where they had a very their self-image was not compatible with who they really were, and so I think that's the first part is learn, know yourself. And that's a good way, just learning about yourself. Running, you talk to yourself, you find out, it's a lot of self-talking going on. So one way to find yourself, but
wow,
it's important that, we know yourself, know your, not maybe your limitations, but at least have a strong sense of self.
yeah, it goes right back to identities, right? So many times we the identities that we think of, a lot of times they're easy to name, are, if I'm a speaker, then hey, I'm a speaker, right? Like, to be able to put a title to an identity, a wife, a mom, those types of things. But we don't always think about the identities that were placed upon us, the ones that other people spoke over us, and all of that, and how over a series of events over our life, we actually have no idea who we are because we've just received what was placed upon us.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, there's
I
a
see that. Yeah, I see that. I've seen it. Parents, they raise their children, and then all of a sudden their children leave, and you see how many couples break up. Because their whole identity was in their children, and now 20 years later they don't have that identity with each other. And so that's, I think, one way it plays out for people. Running is great, by the way, for moms, new moms, pregnant. Well, I've run with pregnant women, but postpartum, fantastic. As well, to get through that and get their health back. So it's something else I like to share as well. I've seen that. So for your mental health as well, it really does regulate your mind as well. So anything that's aerobic, that's going to stimulate the blood and oxygen through must be good for you, right?
Absolutely. And if we think about our emotional state and how running can stimulate certain, hormones in our bodies, right? Adrenaline, which we probably get enough of sitting on. But if you want natural adrenaline or natural dopamine,
yes,
or those types of things, right?
But and I've known people that were taking medications and didn't need them when they were running.
Wow.
Stabilize them. So there's a lot, and just moving, but choosing the right foods to eat, and we can go off on tangents on that health side of things. But it's it's tough out there making good healthy decisions, good healthy choices, what we eat, how we diet and exercise. But it's all part of longevity and health span.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I have just enjoyed this conversation so much. Thank you for your time and your wisdom. And I guess if you, so this is of course the Unbreakable Men platform,
Yes.
and so we'll have listeners from all over that will catch it.
Awesome.
We'll have women that will hear it and they'll say, "Hey, honey, listen to this," right? But primarily it is for men, and men that are
Thank you.
desiring to become the person they were created for. That's what our Unbreakable platform is to help people answer the two questions in life that they face the most: who am I and why am I here? That is
I
our
love it. Yeah, and I've listened to your podcast, and I applaud you for doing this. It is, and you're in a great space, and thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And one final parting word. If if you could have the ear and bend it of someone who maybe is facing a challenge in their life right now, maybe they're feeling like they're sitting in life at that 22-mile mark,
Hmm.
what would be one piece of wisdom that you would like to impart upon them today?
You know, persevere. Lace up, and just do it. Like a cliche, but you've got to push through that wall, and whether it's just getting up in the morning and facing work, or making decisions. We've only got one shot at life, and so make the most of it. I know a younger person, and he and his father always said to him, every time he left the house, make good choices, make good choices. I didn't have that, but I would ask everybody, make good choices, and you will succeed, and it is one step at a time, and we're all going to fall, and we're all going to have 2 steps back or 5 steps back. It's human nature, but if you have a vision and clarity and purpose, be who you're meant to be, and whatever it is you do, whether it's your work life, your family, your passions. Find a passion, find what you're good at. Don't dabble in everything. Find what you're good at, and persevere and be really good at that. And that's something you'll be proud of.
Wow, that's so key, especially today in a world where people
And
are distracted, their minds are divided, and they find themselves running, but this way instead of
yeah,
this way.
right. Yeah, it's just like you're in a treadmill, right? Constantly just and not finding the successes. But they're there. They're there. You just be true to yourself.
Yeah. Well, Gene, I told you it was one more thought, but I actually came up with one more that I want to ask you about because you said something so profound. You said DNF, did not finish or do nothing.
Did nothing foolish.
Did okay, good. It's past tense. I mean, we didn't do it.
Right.
Um, how many times do you think we inadvertently do foolish things because we're afraid of other people's perception of failure or not finishing?
Fantastic. So, it goes back to what I said earlier about knowing yourself, and having self confidence, is critical, right? So, being able to say no, and being able to push back on those people, or those the stinking thinking that are putting these things in your head and saying no, why would you want to do that? It's not going to work, and we've tried that. We've always done it this way, and it's never worked. And so having that self-confidence, it is, and it's not easy. It's, there's so much peer pressure, family pressures, business pressure. So I think part of that is, do not finish, did nothing foolish, that's part of it. But also, taking that risk too is the other part of it. And I always say, if you're hurt, everybody's hurting. Keep going. If you're injured, you stop. That's different. But
Mm.
being
Yeah.
hurt, running, everybody's hurting at that mile 22, and we're all dealing with our own stuff. And whatever, you talk to people, and we're all in this together, and most people are genuinely good and genuinely want good, better things for their families and their lives. And surround yourself with those positive people. Maybe that's another segment, but I talk about that a lot too. Choose your friends wisely. We all have choices, and I use COVID was a good period to disassociate with, I call them vampires, people that suck the life out of me, and the negative people in my life. So that was a good opportunity that I used as well to
Good cleansing.
disassociate. It was a cleansing.
Sorry, we
Exactly.
can't hang out right now.
And I always say you can choose what does it say? You can choose your friends, you can't choose your family, but you can choose how much time you spend with your family too. So there's, if there are people in your family that are doing that to you too, like it's your life. Don't become codependent on each other.
Yeah.
You see that, and that's dysfunction that you see in family units. Be true to you.
Absolutely. But you definitely hit on a great point about the importance of community. And I can only imagine that you have built a beautiful community of individuals who are runners, of course, in this stage as entrepreneurs and business leaders. And I know also travel. But how, let's say somebody is like, everybody I know deals with sinking
Yeah.
thinking. Everybody I know is
Hmm.
kind of those ants wanting to pull me down.
Yes.
What would you recommend on finding their community?
Great. Well, fortunately today with social media, we can use that one too. You find your tribe out there, and if I go on Facebook and I see there's runners over 50, runners over 60 groups, and so keeping it in the runners analogy, there's musicians, there's entrepreneurs. So finding or associations, whether you're joining a church group or being on Business Network International or Positive. There's a lot of organizations that are out there all over, and you're not going to meet people if you are sitting on the couch. You've got to get out also and network and meet and find your tribe, find your positive people.
Thank you. Well, Gene, I know everybody is going to be excited to connect with you. I know they're going to want both of your books, but could you
Oh,
please
thank you.
just tell them where they can find you online and if they want to book you for a keynote message sometime?
Thank you. Well, easy enough. My email is gene@genejochen.com. And if you just really wild, if you Google or put my name into Amazon, my book will come up. It's also available through Barnes and Noble and libraries if they wanted to pick it up. And yeah, so it's quite amazing today how you can get self-published and get yourself out there. So be happy, and easy enough again to find me on social media, and I'm moderately open out there.
Wow. Yeah, it is easy to find
No
people.
spammers, please.
Right, right, right. Disclaimer. Well, Gene, it has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for the impact that you are making, and thank you for not giving up on your first marathon.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. And honestly, again, from the heart, what you're doing is fantastic. And I'm picking up your podcast from your early days, and you're doing great work. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, it is a pleasure. Well, I will be right back with you, Gene. Friends, thank you for joining us today. Wow, what amazing testament to the power of commitment, to dedication, and really the fulfillment of understanding and discovering exactly who you were meant to be and becoming it one step at a time. Thank you for joining us on the Unbreakable Men podcast. Please remember to find Gene Jochen online. Check out his two books, the the marathon mindset for leaders, and the oh, I don't want to say it wrong. One step forward, lessons from 100 marathons. Friends, thank you for joining us. God bless you, and until we see you next time, keep building your unbreakable life.